So what are we trying to do here? I've worked with scientists and technical people quite a lot, and creative people, a whole range of different people actually, and for some of them the notion of entrepreneurship is a complete anathema to them. They don't do entrepreneurship, it's not what we do in our sector, because it's very much associated with business management philosophy. So they want to think of themselves as researchers and not as business people. And so sometimes we have to change the vocabulary of entrepreneurship depending on which sector we're working with. Health workers, Mike talked this morning about the ageing population. Healthcare workers quite often don't want to think of themselves as entrepreneurs because they feel that it challenges the sympathetic nature that they believe is fundamental to their approach to their profession. Creative people think that getting into that messy stuff of business management and money actually compromises their creativity. So we sometimes have to change the vocabulary so that we can align this thinking with their understanding of what they do. So we're going to look at this notion of what it means to be entrepreneurial very quickly. We're going to look at these characteristics and traits that are attributed to entrepreneurs. Because quite often, and you'll see as we go through, we have this preconceived idea of what it means to be entrepreneurial. And we feel that we have to behave that way if we are to proclaim ourselves as entrepreneurs. And that can be sometimes a little conflicting with who we see ourselves as being. So we can evaluate, and the next session with Paul will certainly evaluate your own mindset and your own characteristics in relation to these attributes and behaviours that we see as entrepreneurial. So part of it is to demystify this notion of entrepreneurship and say you can be this thing without compromise, and it's a good thing, and you can change it and shape it to your own needs and aspirations. So don't feel that it is something out there that you have to believe and live in. It's something you can create for yourselves. So for this session, we're going to have a look at what is an entrepreneurial mindset. We will define entrepreneurship, and we'll look at why it's difficult to do that. We'll try to define entrepreneurship. There's a whole series of ways of classifying entrepreneurs, so you don't just become an entrepreneur, you can be a particular type of entrepreneur. And so we'll look at classification systems and we'll explore, well, why is it necessary? Because there is a mindset that says you either are or you are not an entrepreneur. There is no learning around this subject. The nature and the role of entrepreneurship, where does it fit? And that ties very much back to the European strategy, to nation-state strategies, why they want so many entrepreneurs. Europe has a really emphatic declaration that it needs to increase the number of entrepreneurs. There are not enough entrepreneurs to keep Europe or to make Europe competitive. And if we get time, we'll brush across risk, because risk is one of those key factors that keeps coming up time and time again. There is a deterrent to entrepreneurship. And ironically, as later we will discuss, particularly with women, the characteristics that we perceive are very risky for us are quite a deterrent. So on this board, I don't really expect you to read it because they're reminders for me. The presenters this morning came up with some very, very key terms and phrases, and I'll try to keep referring back to them to join the dots between what we're looking at and some of these issues. So, smart specialisation came up. Differentiation was an issue. Complementarities, supply chain, are all part of one stream of consciousness, really. Innovation and open innovation, again, I'll discuss that when we look at collaboration in a session tomorrow, but we need to just refer back to that as well. We looked at trends and counter-trends, because they're important for you as entrepreneurs to spot opportunities, to see where the trends are coming from. Networking and collaboration, the skills needed to effectively network. For many people, it is not a natural thing to do. So you have to learn how to do it, develop strategies for networking that will serve you best. Horizon 2020 and European competitiveness. competitiveness is seen to be going on a permanently downward trajectory from a European perspective. And so an awful lot of what Europe's doing, including this project, is aimed at increasing competitiveness, and this, in this case, within your sector, traditional foods. And innovation is key to competitiveness. So that's why the focus this morning was so much on innovation. Any questions so far? Are we okay? Yeah? Everybody hear me? Yes? Everybody understand me? Super. Okay, now you've got to do some work. I was hoping we'd have a lovely big flat classroom to do this, but unfortunately we've got the lecture theatre, which makes it very difficult. But what I really want you to do with your partners, even if you just turn around and discuss with people in small groups, however you can do it, move around, stand up, walk about, just get into little groups. I want you to think about these things within your groups and then answer the question, from your perspective, what is entrepreneurship? I want you to tell me what characteristics do entrepreneurs have. I want you to say how entrepreneurial are you. You can do that on a show of hands. And somebody from your group just to feed that back to me in about sort of, well, we can't, 15 minutes is too long now because we've lost some time. So if you just take, say, 5 minutes to discuss those key points, yeah? And then we can shout them out to me. Someone from your group can shout them out. Yeah? So can you move up, Okay, how are we doing? No? Yeah? 1 more minute? Yeah, 1 more minute, 1 more minute. You okay? You need a little bit more time? No, you okay? Bit of competition going on. Let's see if you've got more. What is entrepreneurship? My beautiful assistants here are going to make a note of your answers. So what is, just give me some, what is entrepreneurship? What have you come up with? Whether they're terms or a description or a definition, just throw it out. Somebody who's going to volunteer. Oh,
sorry, shall I stand up?
Yeah, no, it's okay, as long as they can, yeah.
Okay, so the terms we came up with were risk-taking.
Okay. So that's a characteristic, isn't it, really? Yeah?
The mindset,
Yeah.
first of all, be a risk-taker, and then looking out for opportunities and making use of them.
Okay, opportunity spotting and
Making use of
opportunity exploitation. Anybody want to add to that in terms of what is entrepreneurship?
For us, we think that it's providing a product or a service through collaborations and network, while we thinking about the risk as well at the same time.
Yeah.
For society, which is customer driven, and for business as well.
Okay.
That's what we think.
Wow, that's a lot. Okay. That's all. Could you say that again? Slowly. Okay, so business opportunities came out, collaboration came out, product or service, opportunity. So it's not just about opportunity spotting, but it's action, turning ideas into action. Yes?
For the benefit of the society and to make business.
Okay, so for the benefit of business and society. Okay?
You just said what we...
Oh, that's easy. That's good. Give us something new.
Richard Cantillon.
He's coming up in a minute, yes.
Chancer, trier.
Yes, okay. Chance a trier.
Hold the vision.
Yeah.
Keep working on it. Till it's real. Must be flexible.
Okay, so our characteristics need to be flexible, persistent, hardworking. So we're drifting into 2. It is very difficult to describe what entrepreneurship is without describing the characteristics of an entrepreneur, isn't it? Because they sort of are you know, so intertwined.
Dynamic
Oh, sorry. Dynamic,
and market oriented.
market oriented, yeah.
Enthusiasm and
Enthusiasm,
aim focused on aim.
enthusiasm, focus, open-minded, determined. I thought couldn't quite get that. Determined,
And also organized person.
determined, organised. It's all over there, isn't it? Come on, we're going to bring it back over here. Come on, guys. It's like... I'm just wondering why you're here. If you know all this stuff, you know, what can we teach you?
Logical,
Logical, that's not been said, yeah.
brave, organised.
Brave, organised, oh my goodness. Persistent, we've got most of those, I think, guys.
Resilient, confident, flexible. Other stuff that you have already.
Yeah, resilient, confident, flexible. Got all them, blah, 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 blah. Looking at trends, so opportunity, yeah, okay, to spot and ride a trend or capitalise on a trend, okay? You can't feed it into them. It has to come. It has to come out of them.
You know, so to select the right people to make a solid team.
Okay, good. So, good at finding collaborative partners and building teams.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, given all of those wonderful characteristics that you've identified and all of those things that we need if we're going to be entrepreneurial, or that we recognise as being entrepreneurial, how entrepreneurial are you? So let's a show of hands. So who thinks of themselves as entrepreneurial by your definition? Because you've just defined it, yeah? Okay. Yeah. Who thinks of who thinks of themselves as a potential entrepreneur?
I think I'm not selfish enough, you know?
You're not selfish enough? Oh. Well, do you know what? We'll hold that thought in mind, actually, because it is important. Because it is. That's part of the downside of characteristics, sometimes perceived, that entrepreneurs are me, me, me. So utterly self-centred. You know, that if it isn't on them, it isn't happening. It's, you know, we don't have to believe that to be true. But it can be a perception that we hold. So the majority of you don't really regard yourself as entrepreneurs. Yeah, is that true? Some of you do, but you don't really think of yourself as entrepreneurs. Yeah?
I think one of the reasons we are here
Yeah.
is to
Yes.
know whether we might be.
Okay, all right. So you think, you're not sure yet, you think you might be entrepreneurs, or you would like to be entrepreneurs?
No, we would like to meet.
Oh, you'd like to meet entrepreneurs? Well, we can probably arrange that, yeah? Yeah.
I'm on one side and I want to meet the I want to.
Networking, yeah. So we'll do some matchmaking, perhaps, with networking, yeah? Yeah. Okay, so we can see that this is, you know, quite a complex minefield, really, in terms of these attributes, characteristics, our perception of what we think these entrepreneurial characters are like. And if we think about developing our own entrepreneurial mindset, that's what we're doing, isn't it? We're saying, okay, maybe I have some of these traits and characteristics, but maybe I have either not had the opportunity to use them yet, because I'm not in the right place, or maybe because I'm not very confident, or I believe the characteristics are not in line with my personality. It could be a whole range of reasons why you might not have actually tried those skills out, exposed yourself to those risks that being more entrepreneurial might present to you. And throughout the next few days, we're going to keep exploring these issues with you. So this module isn't going to give you all the answers, it just may raise the questions so that you can ask those questions through the other modules as we go further down or through the programme. What I'd like to show you is a very quick sketchbook, a nice little quick video that really encapsulates some of what you've already said and explains to you why it's important that you try and action some of those attributes that you maybe have latent within you but have not yet explored.
I'm Gary Schonecker. I'm the founder of the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative. We're the creators of the Ice House Entrepreneurship Program. We all know that entrepreneurship education has never been more important than it is today. And yet the subject of entrepreneurship is still not well understood. And consequently, much of our efforts to teach entrepreneurship are limited in terms of efficacy, scalability, and scope. In the past, we ignored entrepreneurs. They were looked upon as mavericks or fringe players who bucked the system. Today, they have become the engines that are now driving our economy. And yet, while we know a lot about the inner workings of large established companies and small business management, the entrepreneurial process is still widely misunderstood. Much of our efforts are over-influenced by the Silicon Valley narrative, which often leads to a plan and pitch approach, where students are encouraged to develop new technologies, conduct market research, write business plans, and present their ideas to potential investors. Yet what many don't realize is that very few businesses actually start this way. In fact, far less than 1% of all new ventures created in the US each year receive venture capital investment at their inception. So while these elite Silicon Valley success stories may capture headlines, they do not accurately reflect the process that most entrepreneurs undertake. Others fail to distinguish between entrepreneurship and small business management. They tend to approach a startup as if it were simply a smaller version of a large corporation. They encourage students to learn business management skills such as marketing and finance, accounting and legal structures. Skills that are important for managing an existing business, yet skills that are not all that helpful when it comes to identifying and evaluating new opportunities. The truth is, entrepreneurship is not management, and neither of these approaches accurately portrays the process that entrepreneurs typically undertake. We also found that entrepreneurs are not likely to be experts with years of experience in their chosen field. In fact, many have no experience at all, and yet somehow they manage to succeed. The real question is how. How are they able to identify and evaluate opportunities that others overlook? What is the mindset and the process that ultimately enables them to succeed? That's why we created the Ice House Entrepreneurship Program. We wanted to design a program that would inspire and engage a broad range of students from a wide variety of backgrounds, disciplines, and interests. We wanted to develop an experiential, problem-based approach that would immerse students in real-world, resource-constrained circumstances that will help them develop critical thinking, communication, effective problem-solving, and other key entrepreneurial skills. And we wanted to create a scalable program, one that would not require the instructor to become an expert in the field of entrepreneurship. At the end of the day, entrepreneurship is more than an academic discipline. It's really a mindset. It provides a framework for thinking and acting that can empower anyone to succeed. And in today's world, it's a mindset that every student needs.
Now, I like that video because it pulls together a number of strands of things that we think about. In terms of, let me just get rid of, in terms of, I've lost my little, oh there it is, sorry. In terms of the thinking that goes into the way we teach entrepreneurship. So, yes, you need business management skills. We're going to teach some business management skills to you in order that you can effectively look at and evaluate the plans that you're going to produce, hopefully, as a consequence of the innovation that's going on in your head through your research as it stands already. The point of the short video is to say it isn't just about that. It's about understanding a whole range of other things and seeing, actively looking for and finding opportunities within the work that you do. And sometimes they're found by exploration, by actively seeking out and looking for opportunities and trends that you, through your research, can exploit. And at other times, it's through serendipity. Chance favours the active mind, I think, is the term that they're looking for. So if you're looking for collaboration, if you're looking for opportunities, the chances are greater that you will find them. It's about not being passive in using the knowledge that you have, but rather actively looking at how you can enact that knowledge and put it into place around some reasonable and sensible business idea. So we've already looked at all of these characteristics of what an entrepreneur is. And truthfully, you will not find a single definition of entrepreneurship anywhere. You'll find a million definitions. We three could each come up with a separate definition, now about what constitutes entrepreneurship. Because it depends on the perspective you come from. So when you're looking at it, maybe looking at it from a technological point of view, you might see entrepreneurship quite differently from one of those, the young man that it showed you in the little sketch. And the students that I quite often teach, in fact we all teach, they don't have any real skill, but they have energy. They have energy and they have passion to work for themselves, and that's what they bring to bear. What you have is more than that. You have energy, passion, knowledge and skills to bring to the opportunities that you want to exploit. So many definitions exclude the roles played by managers. Some of you here are research centre managers. So you have a multiple role to play. You may be researchers, you may be looking after other researchers, you may be trying to exploit your own research capability for the benefit of the organisation for you individually. So you can't ignore the fact that, like leaders in organisations are seen as visionaries, entrepreneurs also have to manage their business. I think Mike said this morning, you've got to, or someone said this morning, you might have to do everything when your business starts. You literally have to produce all your own material, find your own marketplace, develop your own marketing material, your website, go out and meet customers, deliver everything. Every single thing becomes your responsibility. If you're working for someone else, you can share that responsibility, and some of you are in that position where the organisation has the opportunity to exploit with you your research. And when we talk about intellectual property later today, and in fact over the next few days, it will be about how you protect your ideas for yourself and for your business and understand who owns what within that relationship. So the question is, should entrepreneurship be based on the task that they perform or the person that they are? So that's the reason for trying to differentiate this idea of being an entrepreneur and having entrepreneurial traits and characteristics. Because if we think about entrepreneurship as the tasks that they perform, then it's the output that determines their entrepreneurship, not the person that they are. You can be very entrepreneurial and do absolutely nothing with it. In your mind, it's almost a self-selecting category, isn't it? If you call yourself an entrepreneur, how would you justify that? And if you look at research, it quite often says that to be able to legitimately claim to be an entrepreneur, you have to already be acting entrepreneurially. Does that make sense? Yeah? So when I asked you earlier who is entrepreneurial, I guess the question would be who is already in active business development mode, so they're already thinking about themselves as that person fulfilling that role in the world. The argument is that entrepreneurs should be agents for economic change, and they should be judged by the effect that they have on the economy. So you can be entrepreneurial, but only when you do something major and magnificent and create jobs and create wealth or revenue are you truly entrepreneurial. They're all perspectives. None is more true than the other. Really, there is an element, there's grains of truth in all of them. Certainly when you look at this idea of European competitiveness, the idea is that you are economically active agents looking to increase the competitiveness and differentiation of your business in order to make it more productive within the marketplace. It can employ more people, it can do more research, it can be more innovative. I'm going to skip through some of these definitions very quickly because you've got the slides. But the only reason really I put them in is to show you that entrepreneurship has been around for a long time as a concept, but it's changed. There are different perspectives on what it means to be an entrepreneur. And at its earliest, the entrepreneur was a go-between he didn't have any, or she didn't have any resources of their own. They used other people's resources and used them more effectively to make money. So you have a landowner with money and a marketplace needing products. They would act as the go-between between the people with the money and the marketplace. Yes? As time went on, they started to adopt this idea of risk and profit. So they would take an activity, so they would buy something at a certain price and sell it at an uncertain price. And every lecture theatre I'm in, the person on the front row always has water, and I can always use water as my example. So if I can buy this water for 50 cents and sell it for 1.2 euros, then I'm making money, aren't I? I'm buying at a certain price and selling at an uncertain price. And the money I make is my profit, and that's why I'm entrepreneurial. So universities can buy water everywhere you go, they buy it very cheaply, and they sell it at quite an expensive markup, don't they? So it's looking at how you can take existing products in common use in the marketplace and say, what can I do with this that no one else is currently doing, or that I've got special access or privilege to that market that allows me to make a profit from that, where other people might not have seen it or have realised that the potential was there. Cantillon, you mentioned earlier, he basically put this term down and said you've got landowners, so we've got people with money in modern parlance. We've got entrepreneurs, so people who have opportunities, ideas, but may not have money, can see where potential lies. And you've got hirelings, so people who work for other people, who don't really want to be entrepreneurial and they're happy in that space, happy to be employed and always be employed. As we go through, really, various economists have looked at things, and in essence, what this is all trying to say is entrepreneurs take existing people, material, money, buildings, or whatever resources they have, and use them in a way, redeploy them in a way that makes them more productive. So while with your research you may be doing something very, very innovative, very novel, very imaginative that is new to the world, there may be other opportunities that aren't new to the world, but are new ways of doing what you do, or doing what you know about in a different marketplace. So one definition of innovation, for example, is it's new to you. It isn't new to the world. So if you can do something innovative with existing resources in a new context, then you can be very entrepreneurial and you can make a lot of money out of doing that. But it's a case of spotting those opportunities. Because this whole function of the entrepreneur is to be disruptive, is to take existing contexts and say, why am I unhappy with this? Why does this not work? Why is there no solution to this problem? And what can I do to find a solution to that problem that will make a space for me as an entrepreneur in that marketplace? Now that could be your research. We were talking last night about how entrepreneurial cows are. Now this is another conversation we will get back to at some other stage, but it's looking at a problem that you have through a different lens and saying, well, what does that tell me about this particular problem and how it might be changed a little even to make a big opportunity for me or for my business. Schumpeter saw entrepreneurship as capitalism's soul. And when I said earlier, lots of people find this notion of entrepreneurship within certain sectors very unpalatable, it's because partly they don't want to be seen as capitalism's soul. They want to be creative, or they want to work in a situation whereby there are health benefits or there's common good or social good to be derived from what they do. That doesn't mean to say you can't be entrepreneurial. In fact, the biggest growing sector, certainly in the UK, and I think it's a global trend, is social entrepreneurship. You know, you make profit, but it's what you do with the profit that makes the difference. Now, all of these things, all of these definitions that you've given me and all of those characteristics suggest that entrepreneurs are super people. And when Schumpeter defined it, that they were supermen. A will to conquer, a fighting impulse, will, you know, do or die, will succeed regardless. Do you believe all entrepreneurs are that way? Really? No? I don't think so. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of them. We all have. So the plumber or the electrician who works on houses, or a builder, or an alarm system fitters, or cleaners, are they entrepreneurial? Yeah, in many ways, of course they are, because it depends what they do. They may have this will to conquer, but if you asked them, are you entrepreneurs by those definitions, the answer would probably almost certainly be no. I have some of those things, but do I have all of them? I don't think so. So what I like to think about is ordinary people doing extraordinary things. So the entrepreneur as ordinary person, really. So someone who, you know, maybe come from a disadvantaged background, so is fighting because they have to fight to get something for themselves because there are no jobs for them. So they struggle to be entrepreneurial in a context whereby if they didn't work for themselves, there would be no work whatsoever. So people who've experienced disadvantage quite often have an extra need to fight, where people from more advantage probably have more opportunities but less drive, because it's easier to move things forward. So if we look at the characteristics typically attributed to entrepreneurs, this is it. Hard-working, self-starter, goal-setting, resilient, confident, receptive to new ideas. You know, I don't think there's anything there that you didn't pick up. Yeah? You picked all of those things up pretty much. But the chances of all of you having all of them, I would say, is pretty negligible. And we also need to think about how some of those attributes only ever appear when the opportunity arises for you to utilise them. You might not know quite how resilient you are until you are forced to be resilient because your business is about to collapse and you need to do something about it. So circumstances, context will drive some of those attributes to the surface. They will appear when you need them as opposed to be in you in advance of the moment. Yeah? Make sense? You can disagree with me, by the way, at any time. That'd be good.
We wouldn't gauge.
I'm just conscious time's running out. Oh my God. Okay, so what is an entrepreneurial mindset? A definition is simply presented. It's a way of thinking differently. And I can honestly tell you that once you start to look at opportunities, it's like the door will not close again. You start to see opportunities and you start to think about how you can use what you know or the research that you've developed and say, you know, that could be a really good opportunity. You talk to other people about it and they're enthusiastic about what you say, and suddenly you see ideas and opportunities everywhere you go. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily good ones. I have a 2-hour drive to work every day. It's a long time in the car. I get very bored. And I have ideas. I might have 5 business ideas in the morning on my way into work. 2 of them I probably dismiss straight away. Whittle them down slowly to 1. I go in and talk to my colleagues and say, got that idea, that brilliant idea, it's fantastic. Tell them about it and they say, you know what? Somebody's done it, they've done it, it's already been invented. Don't, you think, oh, start again tomorrow, I've got another 2 hours in the car, have another go. So every idea that you have isn't going to be your best idea, but you have to start somewhere, don't you? You have to start doing something. So thinking differently, that is the ability to rapidly sense, act and mobilise under uncertain conditions. Nobody's going to guarantee you a positive outcome, are they? Really, they aren't. I was talking to some of you last night about a student at our university who was studying maths, and he'd done some of our modules, entrepreneurship modules. And when he was in the exam, his mind wandered. This is the way he's telling the story. His mind wandered onto something. And he came up with this brilliant algorithm, which he wrote on the back of his exam paper. Tim, do you know about this? Do you know? No? This guy wrote a brilliant algorithm on the back of his exam paper. And it was something to do with how you could optimise search engine performance, because he was into that. he would not let the invigilators take his exam paper away until he got that algorithm copied. It's like, you can take it and copy it and give it back to me, but it goes nowhere until I have got a copy of it, because he didn't think he could remember enough of it again to actually, you know, write it down. So it was a moment of absent thought. He wasn't trying, he wasn't struggling, he wasn't looking. It was a moment of nothing. And suddenly this thing came to his head and he wrote it down. He got the paper and he sold it, I think, for 10 million to one of the, I think it was Google or someone. Somebody bought it for him. So he's set for life, you know, and that's, he didn't actually do anything, he didn't give anything back to the university in that instance, because he said it was all his own work and it was an algorithm that came out of the blue. It wasn't directly related to his course or a piece of anything. But he managed to capitalise on it. So his rapid sense of action and mobilising was to keep hold of his paper until he said, you're going nowhere with that, that's, you know, until I've got a copy of it. He didn't know really what the value of it was until he went out into the world with it, but he sensed the value of it, and so he was willing and able to act on it. So having a mindset is this idea of presenting, it's a cognitive process through which the entrepreneur develops higher order thinking, really. So it's when we say higher order, that sounds very grand. It isn't higher order in, you know, no one else can do it, but it's a different way of thinking about the knowledge that you have. Looking at strategies, reflecting on motivations, looking at the environment, looking for trends or counter trends. Because if somebody is doing something that isn't working very well, there is an opportunity there. So other people's failure is an opportunity for entrepreneurial development. Just look at what isn't working to find out where your opportunities lie, because in solving that problem, whatever it is, you're creating an opportunity for yourself, providing you do something about it. Stop thinking about it, do something about it. That's the difference between not being an entrepreneur and being an entrepreneur. It's the action process. You might have all of those skills sitting in your head and not do anything about them. So entrepreneurial personality, we're going to look at that in the next session, in fact, through the PI surveys you've all completed. Everybody completed those? Yes? I have too. I don't know what it says about me either, but I'm waiting to hear. So we don't want you to think of entrepreneurs as absolutely super people, but ordinary people who think differently, maybe can implement those ideas, those wonderful strategies that come into your head. And what we're trying to do is give you the tools to do that action part of it, to say, how can I explore this opportunity? How can I develop a strategy that will help me implement it? What money do I need? How do I work out how much money I need? How do I protect my intellectual property? How do I? They're the things that we're trying to help you think about and give you the tools to do, not to convert you from non-entrepreneur to entrepreneur, if such a thing is possible, but to say you have ideas, do something with them, and here are some tools to help you. This idea of entrepreneurial traits is largely empirically based anyway, and largely taken from studies based on men. So we will talk about female entrepreneurship as a category, and that's a contentious subject, so I'll leave it for Andre to do, because he's better at it than me. But you know, women have different needs in many respects, are different concerns in many respects than men. So when you look at those characteristics, you see that quite often they're very male-centric, you know, very bravado type things. Sorry, men. Don't mean to be dismissive of the men in the room. There's too many of you. But they do tend to be to do with aggression and passion and fighting and tenacity and, you know, very overtly masculine type characteristics. Okay, this is probably the last bit I'm going to talk about because I would like to have a proper discussion with you. There are a number of theoretical issues around this idea of entrepreneurship which I thought would interest you, because I think they will get you thinking about why we use survey tools like the PI and others to help work out what preferences or predispositions you have towards certain ideas of entrepreneurship. So, we're going to just look quickly at this idea of the instrumentation of the concept of entrepreneurship, instrumentation of personality, ontology of personality, and how they fit within certain theoretical paradigms. I always think if you're going to call yourself an entrepreneur, you sort of need to know what that means, really, and where that fits within the wider theory. So this idea of the instrumentation of the concept is a way of saying, if we take all of these characteristics that you've defined, yes, and then we ask you to judge yourself, subjectively mark yourself on a scale of, say, 1 to 5, about how close you are to that characteristic, then using that, analysing that data, will give us a good subjective view of where you see yourself fitting against a range of characteristics that might be perceived to be very, very entrepreneurial. So it's a good way of identifying a self-perception of your entrepreneurial capability. And in doing that, you can actually compare yourself with other people who might be more entrepreneurial because the self-perception or the success or the characteristics that they display, and that's a way of understanding where your strengths and lesser strengths are. We can't talk about weaknesses anymore, so we talk about lesser strengths. I have lots of lesser strengths. So the characteristics have to be non-psychological, but they need to be verifiable, otherwise they may be just self-fulfilling. I call myself an entrepreneur, therefore I am an entrepreneur. You say, well, how is this manifesting itself, this entrepreneurial perception you have? What is it you do to demonstrate that? And so instrumenting the concept is a way of making that a little bit more concrete. If a person starts their own business, an evaluation of the approach they adopt may be a useful starting point to get them to think about where they fit on the grand scale of what it's considered to be entrepreneurial. If we think about this idea of the personality, I'm sure you've all done personality tests, haven't you? MBTI, for example. Have you done that? Myers-Briggs type test indicator? No? Oh, that might be something. Well, I'll leave that for others to pick up. But they're a way of trying to look at your personality preferences, where you see whether you're extrovert, introvert, how you like to work, whether you're a team, you like to work in teams. Typically, entrepreneurial people are not very good team players because, back to your point really, they're self-centred. The perception is that they're too self-interested to be interested in working with other people, or they're fearful of losing their ideas to other people. But the most successful team, the most successful entrepreneurial ventures are usually teams, collaborative ventures, because the chances of you having all of the personality traits and characteristics you need for a successful venture is quite limited. You could probably, at the beginning, cover the whole range, but as time goes on and as your business develops, you will have some very definite strengths and some things you don't like to do very much. You know, and it may be that you're better in the laboratory developing things, but you're not very good at selling. You don't like doing all of that commercializing stuff, but you need to be with somebody who can do that and help you. And this is a way of finding some of those issues out. So this, well, we can look at this a little bit later. So what we're looking at with personality is a consistent pattern of behaviour. So it's knowing where your preferences lie in order to know what is likely to be an inhibitor to that action part of your enterprise strategy. If you know you can develop things, but you just can't pick up the phone and call somebody, do a cold call and say, I've got this brilliant idea, you really should talk to me, then your idea festers, doesn't it? It sits in that place because you haven't got what you need, or you haven't got not the characteristics, but you don't like to do that. So you put it off, and you put it off far too long. And it may be that what you have to do is develop some new skills and new coping mechanisms for the things that you like to do least, because they're the things that you'll put off. So when we look at these tools, we say, what are we trying to do when we think about characterising entrepreneurships? Are we trying to use it as a descriptive tool? As we did earlier, really, this is what an entrepreneur's activities or behaviours should be like, so we can describe entrepreneurs as being all of those things. Do we want to use it as a normative tool that says, if you do this, you will be entrepreneurial? So we can actually judge you to be entrepreneurial. This is a rule of thumb that says necessary actions for effective entrepreneurship are these. If you do them, therefore you're an entrepreneur. Or do we want to do it as a prescriptive tool to say if you adopt these behaviours, you will be entrepreneurial? Now, they're interesting for researchers, they're for scientists, they're for people who want to classify you as being more or less entrepreneurial. And as part of this approach, Horizon 2020, in its quest for entrepreneurs, they've set up a tool which you might want to explore called HE Innovate. It's mainly for academic and academic institutions, but it allows us to judge our entrepreneurial performance against a number of key indicators. Not as a benchmarking tool, but as a way of saying, this is what you're saying about yourself. If you believe that this is sufficiently entrepreneurial, then that's fine. You should be able to get on and do what you need to do. If you feel that it doesn't fully describe what you need to do, then maybe it will identify for you key areas for development. And in your packs, actually, because this is seen to be a particular issue for researchers and innovators in the sciences, I've given you a couple of documents that help you think about this. The Enterprising Research, I'm hoping they're in your packs, yeah? And in there it talks about how you can do some of this self-evaluation against an enterprising lens. You can do all of this online as well. Yeah? Have you got it? I'll give you the link anyway later. We can give you the link. Yeah? There's quite a big, let's have a look.
Is it a big...
No, that's not it. I'll give you the link to these because they're entirely focused on you and people like you to help you look at a whole range of dimensions of thinking and learning and help you to think about how you position yourself in that entrepreneurial space. The aim being to help you to look at where you need to either collaborate with other people who can compensate for the things you can't or don't like to do, or where you can develop those skills yourself and be more self-contained. But we talk about entrepreneurship as a cognitive style, and I think I might be... Have I got time to do this?
Well, it's 12 o'clock, so...
12 o'clock?
How you want to do it.
Have you got lots of questions? Should I stop here? Everything else is in the pack. We have some questions for a quarter of an hour, or some discussion, or do you want me to carry on for a few more minutes? Carry on? Show of hands. Carry on.
Okay.
Oh. Stop altogether? I'm going to talk about this very quickly then. You've heard about the left brain, right brain type thing, haven't you? Yes? People who are very analytical versus people who are very creative. Yeah? Yep. I think Breda, I think her PhD is largely on this subject, isn't it? So she could give you an awful lot more detail on this than I can give you. All I want to do is point this out, really, as a different way of thinking about those skills that you might have or not have. So the cognitive style might be the way you prefer to think about things. Now, we tend to think, probably very wrongly, that as scientists, you're very rationalistic in your approach, very logical, very systematic in your exploration of an idea. Do you think of yourself in those terms? No, sometimes, maybe not. The opposite brain is the one that is much more creative, much more imaginative. Now, there is no you are one or the other. It's a preference or a predominance. You may be more predominantly one way of thinking, more adaptive than innovative. So what it tried to look at, I'm going to just jump by that to this approach. It takes a spectrum. It says at one end of the spectrum, you've got adapters, and at the other end of the spectrum, you've got innovators. So the adapters accept, for any problem, the generally accepted and customary solution. So they say, this has already been worked out, there is a problem, it's been tried and tested, and this is the solution. At the other end, the innovators say, forget that, I'm going to define or find a new solution, an imaginative, innovative solution to this problem that is not something that's been tried and tested. Now, of course, the continuum, there are lots of points along the way, aren't there? And everybody needs a bit of both. Everybody has a bit of both. But the argument is that you have a preference for one or the other. I actually tried with, when I'm doing with students, if you look at anything that's left brain, right brain, eventually you'll find a ballet dancer going round in circles. And depending on whether you see her spinning to the left or to the right, is supposed to indicate whether you're a left brain or a right brain person. Yeah? So you might want to try it, because people who are balanced and very can work both sides of their brain, you know, at the same time, can actually switch her around, get her moving one way and then move her the other way. I really struggle to do that. I really struggle to do it. She's always moving in one direction for me. So adapters enjoy discipline, methodology, solving problems, tend to be very means-oriented. I can only do this, I have the resources to do it. Sensitive to group cohesion, really don't want to upset anybody, really prefer to be in an environment where everything is cosy. So who are the adapters? Who thinks of themselves in that way? Tim. Who else? Oh, we're all innovators. We should expect that you are. I don't know where I am. I go from one to the other at will, really. It depends what environment I'm in. Sometimes I'm very creative. Other times, if I've got something to do, I'm incredibly task-oriented. And I will only be innovative if I have the luxury of time. Otherwise, I'm entirely task-driven. So when the pressure's on, I switch from one to another at will, because I need to get the job done. So, and maybe that's the way we all do it, really. You know, we might have a preference, start one way and finish the other. So our innovators look for unusual ways of solving the problem. They, you know, question best practice and assume wisdom. They challenge things a lot more. It's done this way, but why is it done this way? Is there a better way of doing it? And so they don't really need consensus, and they're not really too sensitive. They just want to get on and get the best. So if we move past that to this, people who are very left brain oriented, allegedly, are very vertical thinkers, logical, and arrive at solutions. Lateral thinkers take an indirect route about things. Now, I've tried to put teams of entrepreneurs together. I don't want all these people, because they'd be fighting like mad within the first 5 minutes. They'd all have the solution. It would be a different solution from absolutely everybody. So you have to mix. If you're looking at teams, you have to find the people who can actually do and implement, as well as the people who've got the ideas. Because just having a room full of these guys is probably not going to get you terribly far. Or they'll fracture. They'll go their own way and say, oh, well, you know what? I want to do what I want to do, not what you want me to do. So putting teams of entrepreneurs together is very difficult, but you do really need to find people who can blend that mix. This is my very last slide, because there's a big debate. It's the eternal debate about entrepreneurship. Can you teach it? Can you teach entrepreneurship?
Is that it?
No, that was a rhetorical. That wasn't a rhetorical question. That was an actual question. This is my last one, though. Can you teach it?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
You can.
If you have people present, that have some basis, some natural characteristics, you can.
Okay.
But I'm not sure that is innate, born. This is my idea.
The jury, it depends on your perspective, of course. The jury's sort of out. I believe you can teach the skills, and that's what we're trying to do, the skills and the tools to help you fully capitalise on whatever level of entrepreneurial, creative, innovative thinking you have. And so it isn't just about saying you can't teach it, because you need to know things that will help you be more entrepreneurial, like how to market, how to finance, how to protect your intellectual property, you know, branding, social media, use of all of those things. How to make the most of your idea. They're the things that can be taught. Your ideas are your ideas, aren't they? You can help people to think more creatively, and there are a whole range of ways of doing that, but we haven't got time now. So that's
Right, thanks, Joan.
My session.
That was very interesting. I liked the bit about the lesser strengths.
Yes.
Okay. I think I'll stick to mine as weaknesses. If you don't mind. I feel more comfortable with them. All right. Oh, that's very interesting. I think obviously it's a topic that's going to run through everything we do for the rest of the week. And I think quite interesting how Joan ends it off with the whole idea about ideas. And everything is about ideas. There's a philosophy that's called idea parenting, which holds that at any one time, 10 human beings have the same idea, but only one of them is an entrepreneur who follows through with the idea, and it's perseverance. We saw this morning about 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. But I think there are a number of questions, and so we throw it open to the floor. We've got about 5 or 8 minutes before Paul joins us to take us through the personality test, which, looking at mine, geez, I think it's quite confidential. So are there any questions or observations or really this, because I mean, of course, what are we trying to do? And you'll see later on this afternoon we talk about entrepreneurship and the whole idea of changing our own mindsets. Because effectively the way the global environment is, we are all entrepreneurs now in some degree or other. And I think universities are starting to realize that. I mean, we are part of the human capital development chain, and we have to have in our students and everyone who engages an entrepreneurial mindset, because the world is changing. But anyway, I'm taking too much of your time.
No.
Any questions? Okay, Joan, maybe I'll ask a question then. In terms of, as you ended off there, you asked the question about entrepreneurial training and can we train or are they born and stuff like that. I mean, what sort of methodologies have you found in a classroom environment like this that can actually generate that mindset or that movement towards that mindset?
I think it's about waking you up to the possibilities, really, and switching your brain onto thinking about things in a slightly different way. To take your research and say, I mean, just picking up on some of these things, smart specialisation. One of the issues that's affecting global competitiveness is that people have become so generalist in many ways. They need to find the thing that they, and this is your business, maybe your business, your research field, your country, your sector is not doing as well as it might do, and specialise on that. What can we really focus on that isn't currently being exploited? Because this idea of differentiation is really key. So when you start to think in these terms and think and look at where trends lie, that's the awakening, really, isn't it? It's saying, how can I exploit this opportunity? And it isn't without the sweat, because you have to go out and do the groundwork. You really have to find the information you need that proves that there is something different about what you do that is able to be a real focus of somebody else's energy and probably funding for the type of things that you're doing, so that you actually can find that space that allows you to solve other people's problems, looking for trends. So we've used a whole range. I've worked with entrepreneurs recently. I've just come back from Africa, and those guys have got nothing. So you're already streets ahead. They're working, in rural communities. They've got the power of their hands in most circumstances, and a little bit of resource in terms of a piece of land, maybe. Now, what do? They're trying to do something with the resources that they have, and that's quite often driven by necessity rather than skill and knowledge. It's just they have to do it. Now, what you guys have got is skill, you've got knowledge, you've probably got resources. It's finding an outlet for them through, looking at the marketplace and saying, where can I place this thing? And how can I take maximum advantage of any trends that are coming up? And understanding the power of collaboration and networks. And as Mike pointed out, there's so many opportunities for you to get funding at the moment through the Horizon 2020 programme. It's screening out for the sort of things that you're doing. So you have to sort of join the dots. And it's really going out and trying that.
Yeah.
Joan, do you think that we use entrepreneurialism or entrepreneurship as an umbrella to cover many different facets?
We do.
I personally believe, you were talking about the Africa and the rural economies. I mean, surely entrepreneurialism should be seen in the context within which it occurs.
Definitely should, yes, yeah. It should.
So,
and
sorry.
No. Well, yes, it should. So whether that's a sector-specific approach to entrepreneurship, so some like the terminology, some don't. We were working with colleagues in Germany, and they think the term entrepreneurship is wrong because it doesn't translate easily into German. They think that they would be far more successful in inspiring entrepreneurs if they called it something else. That's just a different phraseology. You know, whether it's different contexts as in different countries, you see another approach to entrepreneurship, again looking at Africa, and there's an awful lot of European funding going into Africa. They know that unemployment amongst graduates is massively high, so it's trying to get them to be more enterprising through the education system, to get them to see that there are no jobs and that they have to create their own jobs through the work that they do. In Nigeria, they're funding huge projects of investment to support growing businesses, not start-up businesses, because they will create more jobs. So there are lots of different approaches to this subject, depending on the context in which you're in.
That does lead on to Southern Europe.
Yes.
Greece,
yeah.
Italy, Spain,
which, yeah. Which can be most definitely a mindset approach, really. It's culturally, there's a pattern of behaviours that is, you know, it's ingrained over many, many years, and it's trying to break patterns of behaviour that create a different type of approach to entrepreneurship that, you know, will support economic recovery. There's no two ways about it. That's what they're looking at. And here in Ireland, we've got programmes running over here in Ireland in Dublin that support mature entrepreneurs, people who've lost their jobs through the economic downturn, who are looking to start businesses for themselves. They've got skills, they've got knowledge, they've got interest, they've got drive. You know, it's trying to find a space for their products, and we know the export market's probably right for them. So they're looking for international opportunities because there isn't the money here specifically to spend on the type of things that they may want to do. And so it's helping them to look at export potential for their ideas. So, you know, it's born global, the phraseology. You start your business with the idea that you're going to go global. You start by thinking local, and especially anything that involves an internet. Technology, absolutely. You can start your business with a global concept.
But I think the point...
Okay, I think we're going to have to stop there.
Just make one more point. I think we tend to look at entrepreneurship from SME, one-man band perspective. Now, I would, I'd agree with it, but I also disagree, because you can look at it within an organisation. I'm thinking of someone like Google.
Yes.
And how they encourage entrepreneurial thinking within the workforce. And I know Andre's going to be talking about this a little bit later on.
Yeah.
But the key in an organisation is having time to think.
It is. And
I personally think that in a flatter organisation, that opportunity is probably there. In a strictly hierarchical organisation, it mitigates against entrepreneurial thought.
It does. And that is a very key point, actually, because you've got to think about your ideas and your businesses and how you can actually, the action stage is critical, but it's something that needs your attention. And it's very difficult to do that when you're constantly under pressure in terms of performance outputs. It really is difficult. And finding space to do what you need to do with your idea is...
I think that's a very common misperception, you know, that entrepreneurship means that you're going to go off and set up a business. And like you said, that, you know, you can be entrepreneurial now with the way things have changed with the economy, companies like, you know, you're allowed to, you know, use your entrepreneurial skills in you don't have to own the business, but you can actually use them, you know, in a job, in every day, you know.
Most definitely.
I think this is now set the discussion for this evening at the barbecue.
Okay.
So thanks very much.
Quickly, one comment. There's a comment about hierarchical organisations don't encourage it. Completely wrong. The major companies are all hierarchical, and the major successful companies are all the great innovators. You're talking two different kinds of there's no reason from a management perspective whatsoever why a hierarchical company like the one I've worked in for well over 20 years, Coke, is one of the most innovative companies. You don't think about it. Coke, as I said, has 5,000 brands in 5,000 products and about 450 brands all the time. The whole pressure is on people to be entrepreneurial. Not about new products. There's entrepreneurial thinking in everything you do.
Yeah.
The whole company's mindset is entrepreneurial in everything you do. From simple, somebody's my secretary who thinks of a way of changing the way in which we order something or do expenses. These things go up. They go into, of course, they go to groups up the pyramid. People evaluate them. Then they go to whole structures for constant evaluation of ideas coming up. And of course, 99%, are not thrown out. They're parked. I mean, some will be thrown out, but a lot will be parked for future use, maybe. So I think the structure doesn't negate entrepreneurial thinking. It's again a mindset of the company, and that's what it's all about. And it's about being the company's system encouraging people to do that. So it doesn't matter if you're flat or whether you're pyramidal or whether you're some other kind of shape. It all works. And governments too. They're also working. They're all pyramidal, but some are very entrepreneurial.
And I think some are exactly that. Some are and some are not. And I think the complexities. And I'm in sympathy with you. I work in a highly entrepreneurial university where everybody is encouraged to do everything. Process-wise, product-wise, service-wise, looking for improvements all the time. In itself, that creates a different sort of pressure. And sometimes, from my own experience, a couple of hours a week just to think would be a real blessing. And you have to find that time. If you can't find that time within your working day, you've got to find that time in your own time, haven't you, to do that creative stuff, because the contingencies of the moment seem to be all oppressive sometimes. Of course, it's not, it's not all bad and it's not all good. It's just, I think in recent times with businesses shrinking in terms of their employee base, people have taken on more responsibility. And it is, I find it hard anyway, to find that space. So whether it is or isn't true for you, you need to be sure that you actually do let your idea percolate and and develop and grow, and it might take quite a while to do that.
Okay,
yeah.
So we'll stop it there. All right, thanks very much. Please do continue the conversation. And I'd like to introduce Paul O'Leary from PI Europe. Some of you would have done, hopefully most of you would have done the preset